an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Veronica Mars, Season 3, Episode 12. There's got to be a morning after pill. In this episode, another woman is drugged. But this time, instead of date rape, it's a forced abortion. Pretty fucking horrifying. And Veronica is dealing with the breakup with Logan. I got worried here for a sec, kids. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Rachel for commissioning this episode. Rachel is in the chat. She says, hi, hope you are feeling better. I am. Thank you so much. So much better. Still very tired. I get tired. Those of you who aren't aware, I had COVID in the last couple of weeks of December. So we had to completely isolate during Christmas, which was kind of rough. But yeah, doing so much better. Tested negative. Owen tested negative. And hopefully we are never going to have to deal with that again. Fingers crossed. But yeah, I feel like from what I've heard from a lot of people, it's a deal like this fatigue is like the worst part and it takes the longest to go away. So I'm just trying to be compassionate with myself and have some grace there. So this episode, when I said in the intro that I got worried for a second there, what I meant was the end of this episode, the father gives a sort of monologue about not giving into anger. And I really thought they were setting us up for her to forgive Logan. I really did. And, for all I know, they're still doing that. Maybe that's what this is going to lead to in the next episode. But what it seems like to me from where I'm sitting is her not giving in to her anger regarding Madison. And I appreciate that being brought into the picture. It's like, this is one of those things where when I look back at how I reacted to my jealousy of other girls that boyfriends of mine flirted with or were interested in, I tried not to direct it at them, at the girls, because I knew it's on him to not invite this and not be, I, even as a younger kid, I was still aware there's no point in getting mad at the other party. It's the person that has made a promise to you, so you thought, that you should really direct your anger toward. However, as much as I tried to keep that in mind, and as much as I still understand that rationally, none of us are superhuman. You can't help but, hold the other person responsible in the best of times. And that's not bringing into the whole conversation what Madison did to Veronica. Now, I think it was Jesse last week, or not last week, but last episode, who reminded me what it was that Madison had did to Veronica, because I honestly didn't remember. And when she said that she was the one who roofied her, I immediately was like, oh, right. Ugh. But then this episode, Veronica tells Logan in the midst of their argument, she roofied me and then wrote slut on my car. It was slut or whore? Slut, I think. And that to me says a couple things. Either Madison knew Veronica had been raped, which is absolutely unforgivable, or had left her in the position to be raped and sort of assumed that it had likely happened, even if she didn't know, which is just as bad. Or she just did it for unrelated reasons, just because she just wanted to get at Veronica. But if I were Veronica, a girl drugs you and leaves you at a party, I would assume that girl was fine with me being raped. That's what I would assume. And she writes that on my car, and I think she hopes that I'm going to be raped. That's how I would take that, honestly. And like, knowing that she drugged Veronica was bad enough, but adding that factor into it makes it so much worse to me that truly, I hope she doesn't ever forgive Logan for this, because there is simply no way, when you trust somebody the way you're supposed to trust your partner, that you can really get over them violating that, like regarding somebody that you have that kind of history with. I just don't see it, you know? Rachel says, I think she saw drugged V practically passed out on Dick's lap and reacted accordingly. Also, she didn't know she had drugged Veronica. Not to be a Madison apologist. Oh, so she didn't do it intentionally? I thought that she drugged her on purpose. Dick had drugged Madison's drink, but it wasn't diet. Okay, so when Veronica says she roofied me, it's... Oh, she shit in it. You mean spit in it, and I know that, but God, that was a visceral reaction I just had to reading that word. So when she says she roofied me, Veronica's not really being completely factual there. I'm remembering what you're saying now, Rachel, and how that actually happened. Okay. So I take back some of what I said about her then. If it wasn't on purpose, and yeah, she's spitting it, but that's not the same thing at all. That's just being petty. That's not being like vicious in that way. Writing slut on her car is pretty vicious, but she thought that she was like coming on a dick. So I can understand high school rage about that kind of thing. Sucks. I don't like that Veronica misrepresents what happened though when she says that to Logan, because I feel like if you are watching this in real time, it's been years since you saw the scene where that all goes down. And so you likely aren't going to remember the details of it and then be like on Veronica's side 100% and misremembering, you know? Nevertheless, though, I do understand, like, it's just the kind of thing that you want your partner to be wholly on your side in things like this. And this actually came up a couple years ago. A member of the Unspoiled community who was a co-host exercised some really poor judgment on their Facebook page and let somebody be extremely racist and did not come at them about it at all. And there was a whole thing, and afterward they tried to claim that they didn't actually see it happening in real time, which anybody who saw that knows that's not true. And it was the sort of thing that I was like mid-reading it and just so deeply hurt and disappointed that this was happening on this person's page, because there had been a few moments of me just being like, what are you doing with certain people that she allowed to be in her space? And I had talked to her about that, but she maintained that she had control over the situation. And then it just went completely left. And she literally posted, I'm going to dinner now and I'm letting this trash fire go. Ha ha. And then when she came back and saw that the trash fire had indeed completely flared and I had unfriended her, as had several other people, then tried to say, well, I didn't know what was happening. You did. And you made a post about how you knew and you weren't going to do anything about it. And this person was a mutual friend with me and Owen. And I felt so strongly because they wrongly claimed that I hadn't spoken to them about the reservations I had about their friends and the way they handled things. They made a lot of claims that are absolutely not true. They just straight up lied, honestly. And I was kind of shocked to see how many people believed them completely out of hand and just unfriended me immediately. I just really didn't expect that I was going to be doubted when I have no reason to lie about something like this. And I saw about 3 weeks after this all went down, that Owen was still friends with this person. And it was just one of those things where this person had not only allowed racism on their page, allowed somebody to dogpile my black best friend, who already puts up with this shit from everybody and should not have to expect this on a friend's page, but also had lied to people about what she had done and lied about me to everyone and made herself out to be this massive victim and brought down my reputation, like, which as somebody who performs her job solely online, that matters. You know, like what I do depends on the goodwill of the internet community. And if people don't trust me, that affects my career and my income financially, you know? And she lied unrepentantly. And I lost a bunch of patrons over this. Not like an amount that really wound up like hurting, but it was enough that I noticed. And so it was a big deal to me and remains one of the most disappointing experiences of my life, where I really thought this person wanted to be better than they were. And I can't believe still how completely predictable to the like white lady victim handbook they were. But worse than all of that was the fact that she had done all of this to me and my friend, whom I know Owen cares about, and he didn't unfriend her, and weeks had passed. I understood that they were friends and that he was going to have a hard time with it. And so I gave him time. I knew it was going to be difficult. But I really thought by the time almost a month was up that he was going to have bit the bullet and taken care of it. And I found out that he hadn't, because she commented on one of his posts. And it was just one of those moments of like profound, like, I never imagined that you would be so unwilling to do something so basic to support me. This is not even somebody that you knew in person, you know, and you couldn't even be asked to unfriend. And like with Logan, you couldn't be asked to not fuck her. It's not even that, like, you know, that there was some getaway that he was involved with other friends, and he just happened to get mixed up in it. And it was like, I can't believe that you went away for the weekend with her. They actively had sex after she had behaved this way to Veronica. And I am so thankful, honestly, that Veronica tells Dick. Because Dick's reaction, he tries to act like, oh, it doesn't matter. And it's not like they are actually really together anymore. Apparently they hook up sometimes, probably. But they're not involved. But it doesn't matter. And Dick goes up to Logan later and says, you hooked up with her? And Logan was like, well, I didn't think that you cared about her anymore. And Dick says, still not cool, man. Now, honestly, look, Dick was okay with rape, which we saw in that season. So I don't really like give a shit about Dick as a person. But I appreciated him saying that, at least to Logan, that like, yeah, we all know you don't fuck your friend's exes, especially a friend who's such a close friend, they live with you. You know, that you just don't. That's like a rule. And if you ever do hook up with a friend's ex, it's because you have cleared it with said friend, and in such a way that you absolutely know they are being honest with you when they say they don't care. Otherwise, that person is just off limits to the end permanently. And what kills me is like, we know that Logan can find girls to hook up with easily. He hooked up with that other girl in the car on the beach, which, by the way, I feel like the show has forgotten about her. But, well, I haven't. I remember. And he had just met her that day. It's not like there weren't other options for him. Veronica was willing to let go of the fact that he had hooked up with somebody while they were on their break. Very Ross and Rachel situation. And despite that, it was just not in the cards for him hooking up with another girl on that shorter break was already towing the line of like, that's not great, dude. But then he had to sleep with Madison, and she alleges when she's talking to him about it, when she's yelling at him about it, honestly, you had to know how specifically that would hurt me. You had to be aware either that was just something you were fine with, or that was what you actively wanted, was for me to be specifically hurt by this. He claims that wasn't it. I tend to believe him that it wasn't, honestly, because like Logan doesn't seem like the type to think things through enough for that to have been a factor. But saying that that wasn't what he intended when he lies so much is not something that, like, she doesn't owe it to him to believe that at all. And the way that he tries to defend himself with the, you didn't have a right to know, and I didn't think that you could handle it. That language is so gaslighting. Like, first, you didn't have the right to know. Now, that's an interesting question. Did she? I feel like different people would give different answers to that. I personally think that if you are having a heart-to-heart with your significant other who you are claiming to be monogamous with and to support, and you had this indiscretion, and that's what I'm going to call it, even though it wasn't strictly cheating, you owe it to them to be honest because of how much it would hurt them. I think that's like something that you would owe your partner in that situation, personally. It's just, it's the kind of thing where you can pretend, because it's such a high voltage lie, that it's too much. But really, that's why you should put it out there, because I'm going to say this like to everybody as somebody who has low-key cheated. And I say low-key because it wasn't in person and I didn't actually hook up with somebody, but nevertheless, I still cheated, really. Your partner will always find out. And I knew that when I was doing it. I figured it was a matter of time before Brendan found out. I just, I kind of thought I could control when it happened and how it happened, but I figured he would. Anybody who does this sort of thing and thinks that they can just permanently get away with it is either fooling themselves or they don't plan on sticking around long anyway. It's one or the other. They're going to get out of this soon enough that if the partner finds out, it's going to be they're long gone by then. Or they straight up do not understand how many things can coalesce to like out your little lie. And with Logan, the idea that, first of all, she's Veronica Mars. Her whole thing is digging up dirt on people. So what are you doing? And secondly, Logan, you know how vindictive a person Madison is. You don't think she's going to tell Veronica? She came into your hotel room. I say hotel even though it's where he lives now. But she came in your room fully thinking that you guys might hook up again. So you have obviously not made it super clear to her that that was a one-time thing. I judge a great deal of what happened between them on the fact that she turned up at his door again. Now, whether or not she genuinely thought they were going to hook up again, or she just wanted to put the idea in Veronica's head and turned up even though she knew it wasn't possible, I don't know. But I don't think the show has given evidence to support that. I think they hooked up. He got back together with Veronica with no notification to Madison because she mattered so little to him. He didn't see a reason to let her know. And she turned up fully thinking that he was still in hookup mode. And then it turned out she was wrong and she was going to just leave it until Veronica, the two of them went needling at each other and she decided to just play her trump card. And that, for me, as much as anything, is a major problem. That he hooked up with her, got back together with Veronica, and didn't go to her and be like, look, This didn't happen. I regret it. I don't want to do it again. He didn't tell her anything. He just moved back on to his ex-girlfriend and acted like Madison never happened and wasn't a person. And honestly, as much as Madison sucks, that's no way to be. Like, that's also shitty. And so, yeah, for me, Logan is long past the point of being redeemed as a boyfriend. Maybe as a person, he could be. But at this point, the two of them do not do well together. They don't belong together. They're bad for each other. He needs therapy, extensive therapy. So does she, honestly. And they both shouldn't actually have a relationship. They both need to be by themselves. And I am just so worried that the show is going to force the two of them back together. And I just don't want to see it. I'll say it. If they do it, I am going to be off board. I'm going to be angry about it, and I am going to be bored. There is no worse combination than bored and angry. But that's what you'll get. So just be ready, everybody. So I just wanted to talk about that right out of the gate, because obviously that's one of the major things for me this episode. There's the case of the week, but what's going on with characters that we know pretty well by now? That's what most of us are going to care about the most, you know? And what it turns out that she's like learning to restrain her rage about is actually Madison's car. Madison gets given a car for her birthday, a new Mercedes with the license plate "Got's Mine." I love how like novelty plates factor into this episode a couple times. There's also God's Love, LUVV. And it's just kind of funny that it was twice in one episode. Did the Dean have a novelty plate? I feel like he did, but I don't remember. But she gets in touch with Weevil and asks him to steal Madison's car and crush it into a cube. And he agrees to do it. First of all, he agrees for $500, which I loved that he said that to her. I was so pleased. I had been feeling a way about her using Weevil for a long time, and I'm very glad that he's beginning to charge her very reasonable rate for very dangerous work. And part of the reason that he agreed to do it is because she once lost a hubcap and then told the principal that he had sold it for drug money. And the way he says it, there's such a like bite to his words when he relays that memory. And I just felt it in my soul. Somebody who was just like, that fucking bitch. So yeah, that motivates him, and he does the job and is about to squash it to a block. And Veronica's encounter with this pastor who talks about letting go of anger because it ruins you. She decides to not do it and instead tells him to put a can of tuna on one of the AC vents and leave it. Which is, I mean, you know, I don't really feel like busting this girl's car was that bad a thing to do, because I'm sure it's covered with like the best insurance money can buy, and she probably could have just gotten a new one tomorrow. But I guess that depends on them ever finding it. Or maybe not. I don't know how that kind of insurance would work. So in some ways, I feel like doing that is even worse than crushing it, because now she's just got a car that's going to stink forever. And there's no like fixing that. But maybe that's what maybe she's like, yeah, I'm going to restrain my rage, but use that to do something even worse. Haha. But I was just relieved that that was what her change of heart was, rather than getting back together with Logan. So she, when we talk about this woman who got pregnant, I know that I'm going to need help, just FYI, Rachel, for this girl's name and her roommate's name. And Tim is the name of the TA, right, who she hooked up with. I don't know why, but like Hulu is not wanting to cooperate with me sometimes. There it goes. Okay, good. Because I like to be able to go through the episode with the subtitles on and actually get like word for word what people said in certain scenes. So this girl is, she is the one who hooked up with Dick at that party. And by hooked up, they just made out, I think, at the party, but they had definitely slept with one another before, because Veronica saw her coming out of Dick's frat house, if I'm not mistaken. Bonnie. Thank you, Rachel. And she comes to Veronica and is like, look, I got pregnant and somebody slipped me an abortifacient, I think is how you say that word. I miscarried, and the doctor said that some of my weird symptoms sounded like I was having an allergic reaction to this certain drug, which I didn't take, but they did a blood test and they found it in my system. Somebody slipped me something to cause me to miscarry, and I want you to find out who it is. And look, I am somebody who deeply, deeply fears pregnancy. I've been pregnant once before. I had an abortion. I don't regret it for a moment. Not even an instant. There isn't even a bit of me that occasionally is like, well, I wonder. No. My life would have been worse. I know it without a shadow of a doubt if I had that child. That said, if a woman wants to keep it, that is 1000% her business, and that is all there is to the story. End of. I don't think it's the smart decision. I don't think it's a decision that should be made at the age that these girls are. But that said, not mine, not my decision, not my consequences. And the idea that somebody would make this sort of judgment call is so awful to me. And there is no fixing that friendship. That's it. Like, the two of them have been friends since they think she said the 7th grade. Not anymore. That's done. You're done. I can't imagine. They are roommates here at this dorm. There's no way this girl's coming back to this room. Like, and by that girl, I mean Bonnie's roommate. Because I think Bonnie kicks that girl out. Is what I would imagine would happen. Either that, or Bonnie's parents have her come home. Depending on how close she lives, maybe that. And I always want to know about how these sorts of things shake out, because I think I'm addicted to like closure in certain stories. And the thing is, like, a story like this, if we were talking about a real life situation, there's no closure, you know? And that's something I think a lot of us have a hard time with in life, is you don't get closure on most things. You just don't, you know, you have things that end abruptly, unfairly. You don't get to have your say. You never get to feel that the person understands where you were coming from. And you just have to walk away knowing that they don't get it, and they probably won't ever get it. And it's terrible, because we've been led by media to believe that there will always be a point at which you get through to somebody. There will always be a point at which somebody who has wronged you actually regrets it, realizes that they made a mistake. Because we've seen these satisfying moments in fiction. That doesn't happen often. You may find out years later that somebody regrets it, that they've talked about how they regret it to someone else, and you wind up finding out. But you don't get a moment with them, usually, where they pour their guts out, or, you know, it's just... And this kind of violation is so profound. And I really wonder if there's any, like, I have to assume that there are people who have done this to friends in the world. I mean, everybody's done everything, and right? But I can't imagine thinking that you have the right to make that call. And I say that as somebody who has, like, low-key wished in some ways that I could make that call. I have had friends get pregnant and be downright excited about it, And I have been sitting on the sidelines like, I am watching a train wreck. And they are delighted and excited and looking forward to the future. And as far as I am concerned, they have ruined everything and they don't know it yet. Still not my call. There's simply no excuse. And I would like, Rachel, your opinion on how this winds up coming out, because I'll get to all of everything that leads up to it, but I'm going to start a little bit at the end here. When we go to her room and Veronica is there, her father is there, her roommate is there. Veronica sees the pregnancy book and the, bookmark inside it that's sitting very clearly on this shelf. And for some reason, Veronica assumes that because this bookmark is in this book, it means that guy gave her the baby book. Was it just me that saw that book with that bookmark and assumed it was the roommate's? The instant I saw that, I was like, oh my God, it's the roommate. And I thought Veronica had figured out it was the roommate. And I thought that she was sort of playing it in order to get the roommate to confess. But as the scene continues, Veronica looks more and more shocked. And I think she really didn't know what was actually happening and stumbled backward into the answer. And I'm curious to know, Rachel, whether you think it's that she knew and set up the roommate, or did she accidentally stumble on the truth? Because it's honestly kind of a convoluted thing here that I still don't really understand. So Veronica, in investigating this, she goes to the clinic, the women's clinic, to try and find out as much as she can about how you can get a hold of this drug and whether people are allowed to leave with it. Whether it would be possible to hold it under your tongue and leave and spit it out. And while she's there, somebody takes her photo and sends it to her father. And apparently this is a thing. I didn't know that this was a thing, but it's incredibly disgusting to me. She comes home and her father is like, is there something that you want to tell me? And as much as I totally respect him wanting to have an open relationship with Veronica and talk to her about stuff and wanting her to feel comfortable telling him, I wish so much that he had just ditched this and not talked about it and just been like, if this is what she chose to do and not tell me about it, then that's her decision. Cause she's almost an adult here. She is technically an adult, legally speaking, but I'm saying almost. But I understand he had to bring it up. Rachel says, I always thought it was an accident. Okay. That's how I read it once the scene played out. But so Veronica and her father decide to track down who took these photos. And there's all this literature that has been included with them in the packet. And they track down the publishing company to this little office. And while they're there, the guy has binders with photos kept in chronological order so that Veronica can take a look at who was coming and going on certain dates. And one of the girls that was leaving is somebody that she saw hook up with Dick. So she goes on the wrong trail for a minute, thinking that this girl got sent in by Dick to get this drug and then used it to force this termination, which is a weird, convoluted thing, especially to think that that girl would agree to do it for him. But that's the thing that she thinks might have happened until she talks to both him and the other girl. And it's very clear that that girl is not loyal to him at all, doesn't really want much to do with him. And he has no idea what Veronica's talking about. He's just too stupid to be figured out how to handle it like that. Honestly, if Dick Casablancas was going to take away a woman's choice, if he was going to try and stop her from having his baby, I feel like he's the kind of guy that would be more likely to figure out a way to push her down the stairs, make her fall. Something really crude and like cruel in a way. Not something neat and something that might have been undetectable if it weren't for the allergic reaction. So let's see. She says, I always read Keith's comment, not that he thought she was pregnant, but more like, what are you researching that you went to this place? I disagree with that. In that scene, his anxiety until she explains it wasn't for her feels very real. He seemed genuinely freaked out until she was like, it wasn't for me, it was for this other thing. And then you see his whole body kind of relax. She says, I have not, nor have I ever been pregnant. I am not, nor have I ever been pregnant. And he seems like it's a huge weight off him. So yeah, I really think that he thought the worst for a minute there. But I was glad that he like immediately believed her, because I kind of wondered if he was going to be like, really? But they didn't play with that, and I'm really glad. So Veronica, the dude who is doing this like recon and sending out these notifications to parents, he is the CFO of Bonnie's father's church. And her father's on TV. He's like, you know, one of those televangelist, but like locally kind of types. And what Veronica begins to think is that maybe the CFO slipped her the drug because Bonnie's dad is about to like come on to like primetime TV. And maybe the CFO thought this dude having a pregnant unwed daughter would not play well to their audience. And so he decided to sort of clean up the look of everything by ending her pregnancy, which honestly was a reasonable, I kind of thought that was going to be it myself. Like when she came to that conclusion, I was like, that makes sense. Yeah. And that's the connection, is that this guy has been outside these places taking photos and then sending them with these bookmarks and literature to people's private homes. So let's go to this point when Veronica finds the bookmark in the roommate's book. Is it supposed to be that the roommate is friends with the CFO? And like, where, or did she get sent that bookmark because she went to the clinic? Is that what we're supposed to think? I mean, her parents would have been sent the bookmark, I would think. How did she get a hold of the drug? And is she also a Christian? I'm not sure that Bonnie is. I get the feeling that she isn't, but I don't know. I just don't really understand the link between the roommate and the bookmark, how she got a hold of it, and how, why it would have been sent to her dorm room even, instead of like to her parents. And that would have been its own whole thing, that her parents thought that she was like getting an abortion, that I think her roommate would have heard about, that there was like a kerfuffle with that if they're very close friends. I don't know. It's just because she then says, Bonnie says, when Veronica says, I think it was so-and-so, he is your dad's CFO, but he also runs this other organization that sends out this literature and these bookmarks. Bonnie says, he didn't give me that baby book. So the roommate gave Bonnie a baby book with the bookmark in it from a pro-life campaign? That's a weird thing to do. I don't really, like, is it supposed to be that her roommate is friends with the guy and it has nothing to do with her having been spotted coming in and out of the clinic? Because Veronica had met the roommate by the time she went through the photos at that office. So she would have seen photos of the roommate coming out of the clinic because of, unless they stop her before she actually gets there, because somebody comes in and recognizes her and they get kicked out. So maybe she just got stopped before she could get to that photo. But that's probably what it is, I guess. That's why she was interrupted, so that she couldn't quite get there and know for sure. I'm not really following the connection between the roommate and having that bookmark, and why that caused all of the pieces to fall together. And Rachel is saying, I think I'm missing something important because I don't remember. I feel the same, because like I said, I saw the bookmark in that book, assumed wrongly that was the roommate's like desk that it was on, and then immediately thought, oh, it's the roommate who did it. And then it turns out that wasn't the roommate's desk. That was Bonnie's desk. And there's no real reason when I stop and look at it to think that bookmark belonging to the roommate is an immediate like declaration of guilt. So I don't know. I'm in the same boat as you, Rachel, where I feel like I missed something. Something has been said to explain this, and I didn't catch it. Someone in the future is going to be yelling at us because they know exactly why. Yeah, likely. If you guys know, please feel free, like, comment in the Mighty Network. If you are in there, like, you can email me. You can leave comments on Facebook and stuff, but I'll be honest, Facebook has been acting very weird for the past, 6 months, and I can barely even, see notifications on my phone, which is the primary way that I use it. So I miss a lot, and it takes a long time for me to be able to reply to people because I have to be at a desktop and yada, yada, yada. So I recommend emailing on spodpodcast@gmail.com if you do want to get in touch for sure. You won't for sure get a response, but I will almost for sure see it. Anyway, the roommate's reasoning is that neither of these guys were worthy of you, and you have dreams and plans and so much potential, and I was trying to help you. And I understand being on the sidelines and really feeling that way. But taking that extra step to purposely cause a miscarriage is so heartless. It's such an awful violation of trust. And trying to imagine how you could do that to somebody who's supposed to be your best friend and then continue to be their best friend and never say anything or admit it or let that eat away at you. I don't know how you do it. There's just no way. I could never live with myself and continue to be friends at the same level I had been after something like that, you know? And like I said, I'm sure that somebody out there has done something like this. I'm sure. But it's sort of like, it feels like such a dude thing to do, not a chick thing to do. It just doesn't quite hit for me. You know, it just, that kind of violation of bodily autonomy coming from another woman, it's on the level for me of it turning out that a bunch of these sorority girls, or not even sorority girls, like the Lilith girls, lied about being raped kind of thing. It's like, we're doing this to allegedly push a feminist agenda, but it's actively hurting our cause and anti-feminist, really. And that's not to say that makes it unbelievable, because people frequently do things in the name of XYZ that flagrantly fly in the face of whatever it is they profess to stand for. So, it's not that makes it unbelievable, but it feels off to me because of that. I think if the show hadn't made such a horrific misstep with handling the whole rape story in the beginning of the season, I wouldn't hold this against them as much. But they've lost my goodwill and trust in that department. And so it just sort of circles back around to me being like sort of suspicious of the motivations behind this again. Just another instance of them being like, oh, well, you think that men are terrible, but guess what? It was somebody that was supposed to be your friend, just like, I guess. I will say that I really appreciated that Bonnie's father is played with such compassion, because it's a really easy thing to make a Christian character into a comedy, like a parody of themselves. And that's not to say it's not deserved to a degree, because God knows, as somebody with a born-again father who met some people that really, if I told you about them, you wouldn't believe me. The kinds of hypocrisy and bullshit that exists, but it is low-hanging fruit that's very easy. And I kind of liked the fact that, like, we have Veronica talk to him one-on-one, and while he is pro-life in a way that I will never agree with or support, I did appreciate that as much as he is pro-life, that compassion extends to his daughter. There are a lot of people that claim to be pro-life until it's somebody that's inconvenient for them. And then all of a sudden, it's either a disowning, which is what Veronica pretends is she's worried about personally, or it's covering it up. Like there's a lot of cases having babies taken away and given to somebody else to raise, and that person pretending it's their child. Or just straight up hypocrisy where you have somebody have an abortion and just pretend they were never pregnant and that this never happened. Which is really, in that case, is one of those that I know that happens. And I wonder if you were somebody in this sort of position in the world where you preach to people, and if you had, let's say he did encourage his daughter to get an abortion and then continued preaching pro-life. How does that make you feel as the daughter who had an abortion at pressure from your father, to hear him condemn abortions publicly? I mean, that's got to do a number on you. So when Veronica talks to him, first of all, he admits that his daughter was pregnant, which is a huge... It's not just honesty on his part. It's making himself really vulnerable because he believes what he believes so deeply. And that is impressive to me. I really, really liked that moment. And I felt like it was unexpectedly sweet, that he was willing to put himself out there and be like, actually, my daughter was pregnant. And then the very real grief that he expresses when he says she lost the baby, it's more convenient for him that she lost the baby, because most people didn't know that she was pregnant. Like, it wasn't something that was hugely common knowledge. So a lot of men in his position would be relieved. And here he is obviously upset by it, hurt by it. And that's part of what gets him crossed off the suspect list for Veronica. But I really liked that. And I liked at the end that he tries to encourage his daughter, because understandably, Bonnie absolutely flips out on her roommate once she finds out, loses it. And it's like, I can't stand to look at you. How could you do this? Which is like absolutely how I would be as well. Oh my God. Yeah, you better not even be within fucking eye shot of me for the next several months, at least. But he doesn't just try and like downplay how she's feeling. I felt like the script was written very carefully to just be like, anger will eat you up, and make it more about her and like how you just sort of, to a point, you can of course be angry, but there is a point at which anger turns into trying to like fight the reality that you're in, that you hope that by being angry enough, you can sort of change what's happened. And that's just a fool's game. It's fruitless. There's no changing a thing like this. So remaining angry, while it's understandable, it doesn't help. And he could easily have been as angry as his daughter was, and, pointed fingers at this girl who he called a second daughter as he comes into the room, and called her a killer, which a lot of people in his position would have done. And instead I won't say he defends her, but he says she didn't mean to his daughter, which, that's not exactly true. She 100% did mean to, but what he means is hurt you. She was trying to help. And that was a level of compassion for him on a subject that I wouldn't think that he would have any sort of flexibility on. Do you know what I mean? So I was very pleasantly surprised at the nuance that we were granted with him as a character, because it's really so easy and so common for a Christian character to just be played very one note. It's part of why in the Dresden Files, I really enjoy Michael Carpenter as a character. Michael Carpenter is a Catholic man, and his faith is a very genuine thing and very beautiful, and written in such a way that it feels calming and good in a sense that comes off the page and calms you as a reader. And that's a hard thing to pull off, and doesn't happen often. Mostly people who are religious are often portrayed as a bit of a joke. And, I don't personally have a lot of faith, but it does rub me the wrong way, even as somebody who doesn't have religion, when I see that happen over and over again, because that's just not true for everyone. Everybody is a hypocrite to a point, sure, but people who have religion can be played as so much worse, and that's not necessarily true. It can be, but it's not always. It can be a help. It can be an instrument of comfort, or holding yourself to a higher standard, or trying to improve even if you didn't do well the first couple times around on whatever subject. So anyway, I just wanted to take an aside to mention that. So the other thing that happens this episode, and it's a really weird thing, that I'm not sure what the deal is here. Keith is out walking the dog, and I will mention, I think that's supposed to be backup, but that's clearly a totally different breed of dog, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know. Maybe it's not supposed to be backup anymore. And he stops at the dean's wife's house. I am forgetting her name. And he wants to talk to her about the discrepancy in the eyewitness account of what car was in the parking lot at the school, because she claimed that he had that he had borrowed the minivan from her. And yet the woman who egged his car says that she egged a Volvo. And so he's trying to figure out what could be the reason behind the discrepancy. Mindy, thank you, Rachel. So later on, she invites him in for coffee here. He doesn't agree because he has the dog with him. Later on, he comes by because she is panicking due to somebody being in her house. This was a weird thing where she calls him to ask about, to have him deal with this instead of calling the cops. And her explanation is, you are closer and competent. And it's one of those things where I'm like, yeah, I guess, but it doesn't really totally work for me. It's fine for what we need for the show, but it is one of those moments where I'm just like, this woman would absolutely not hesitate to call the cops when she heard somebody in her house. I'm sorry. This lady, not even for a moment. I don't know. Unless this turns out to be part of her grand design, and then, okay, maybe. But by the time he gets there, there's this dude who it turns out is her first husband. And he is supposed to be, as we find out, a meth head who has broken in to steal some stuff to make up for the fact that his ex-wife has stopped the payments on his car, and so it got repossessed. And essentially, he is trying to scrape some money together by probably pawning things or selling things or whatever. Both of these kids are from that marriage, her eldest and youngest, I think. And this dude, it's one of those things where it's sort of treated like it's very obvious that he's supposed to be a meth head. If you've ever actually met a meth head, it's just, this guy is not even close. Like, it's just a very different vibe. But he's a TV meth head, I guess. He is walking out and takes a vase off of the table on the way out, and literally just like takes all the flowers out of it, puts it down, and then just says, "There's that vase that I was looking for." And I guess that's what his story is. It's like, oh yeah, I was looking for this. So Keith like goes to check on the eldest son. He's just like, yeah, everything's fucking great, whatever. And pretty much rejects Keith's extension of a hand, which, I mean, why wouldn't you? You don't know this guy. Keith goes downstairs and is like discussing this with Mindy, and she offers him a drink. He's like, sure, and goes to the kitchen and goes through there into the garage. I don't know what it is that he's looking for exactly. He finds what looks like a smear of like white paint, and I am not sure what that is supposed to signify. I'm watching it again right now. It's like white. Is it supposed to be egg underneath the windshield wiper? Is that what it's supposed to be? Because I thought it was paint, but now I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh wait, it's eggshell. It's eggshell. That's what it is. Okay. So he tries to make an excuse about that he thought maybe that there was an adult beverage like fridge out in the garage. And she seems to believe him, but I can't tell if she really does. It seems pretty obvious to me he was snooping around. So the Volvo was there, is what this is establishing. And she's lying about her car having been there, or his car really having been there. She's saying that he borrowed such and such, which if it were an honest mistake, if there were really a mix-up and she didn't remember, that would be one thing. But if there's still egg on the car, it means that she had to take that car to be cleaned. And she knows full well that it got egged. And when he brought it up with her, she would have said so. And she doesn't say so. So she's trying to cover up something. And I just can't imagine, because she's the one who she went to him to try and get him to prove that it wasn't a suicide. Because if it is a suicide, then it means that she's not getting her insurance payout, right? If she killed him, and she really was the one responsible, she has every reason to not try and make it look like a suicide. You would just make it look like a murder. And you would, like, probably, if I were her, if I were going to kill my husband, and I wanted the insurance, I would stage a robbery. Something, basic, simple. Probably wouldn't do it at his office, because that really doesn't make any sense. I'd probably find somewhere to kill him that was, like, off the beaten path, like he had gotten carjacked or something. So, yeah, her going to him, if she were guilty, doesn't make sense. But lying to him about this sort of thing, she has to know this isn't going to help his investigation. What is it she's trying to hide? Is it that she doesn't want him to know that, like, her husband found out about the affair? Well, he knows that. He's the one who told him. Maybe she doesn't want him to know that her husband confronted the two of them? I don't know. So yeah, this is just a weird thing. Like, why lie about this? And that means that her car was there that night, which like, if it was, what was she doing there? Did she follow him? Is it that he took, like, he borrowed the minivan, drove to the hotel, and confronted them, and then took the Volvo back to his office? Took a different car back? It could be that simple. I don't know. I don't remember if somebody mentioned spotting the minivan at, like, around the same time as the Volvo. I feel like they were two separate sightings, but I could be wrong. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know what her motivation would be in hiding this, but I feel like it has to be that she doesn't want people to know that there was a confrontation at the hotel. And I'm not really sure that makes things worse for her. I feel like just telling Keith about that is probably better. But, you know, people keep secrets for stupid reasons. What do I know? So, yeah, that's the end of the episode. So I'm really curious. I really don't know what to make of the Dean's death still. But I'm going to wrap up. So thank you very much, Rachel, for hanging out with me and helping feed me a bunch of information. Anybody who has info on the whole thing with the roommate and the bookmark, if you know what that means, please help. And yeah, I guess we're just over halfway on this season now. So I'm really curious, like, where we're going to start to go, because the Dean's death was about a third of the way into the season. Is this going to be the main mystery for the whole rest of it, or are we going to have another switcheroo? I am curious. Rachel says, sorry, I couldn't answer all your questions. That's okay. I understand. You know, this is why I have people feeding me info on Dresden Files. I'm the spoiled one on that, and I still can't keep shit straight. So, all right, guys, thank you all so much. I appreciate you all. Hope you're enjoying the show, and I will see you again soon. Soon. I believe next week with a new episode. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.